Welcome to another edition of Success Talk. This is Dr. Herbert Harris, and each week we bring you incredible people doing fantastic things. People who have had a vision, who had challenges, who had obstacles, but who have made breakthroughs and accomplished and realized their vision. Today we have a great friend, Deidra Mayberry. Welcome, Deidra.
Hey, Dr. Harris.
It is a joy to have you on the program. But first, you're absolutely gorgeous. Okay.
Well, thank you.
And it is beautiful to see books in the background. I mean, there was a time when I used to do a lot of interviews in different times, and books were that was where you did your interviews, in your library. But
Mhm.
now you go into people's homes and they don't have libraries.
Yeah.
How have you found that? I mean, because you're so focused on reading and helping people have a different experience of life, how have you found that sort of change where books have not been like the center of family activities?
Well, for me personally, because of my background and me struggling with reading, there's something just exciting about being able to pick up a book and flip through the pages and mark on the pages and see the wrinkles.
Mm,
That is special and just something that I personally miss because I didn't read
hmm
as a young child. So I always look forward to it now. And where, yes, there may be convenience in digital books, I really value a hard copy.
mm. Yeah, I think that we used to always write in our books, and there was something about writing in the book that made a big difference. I guess it gave you a different perspective, and it made it personal.
Hmm.
You can't write in a digital book.
Nope.
How do people make notes?
I'm sure some of them they do have like note sections, but it takes you away from the page to be able to do it. So
Okay, yeah.
there are ways to do it, but I think again there's nothing like a hard copy, your pencil or your pen, and really writing yourself notes. And naturally we pick up books again. So to really see when we evolve as people, what notes and what things we wrote in a different season of life, that
Wow.
really kind of helps to jog the memory or take us back or to celebrate the growth is something pretty special.
Yeah. Well, it's really a study technique, a learning technique. I use it. I've been, was a self-taught person. Like I was
Hmm.
taught myself tons of stuff. And a key element was the notes.
Hmm.
And you said something very nice. When you go back, I know many times I'll pick up a book and I'll read the notes I wrote in the margin. And it's
Hmm.
something I'd completely forgotten. It's like, man, that was a good thought there.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
And also, when people pass on their books, like my grandmother recently passed, and I have her Bible, and just to being able to see what she wrote in the margins and just different things really opened up a different perspective that gave me insight on certain aspects and areas of her life as well.
Wow. Now that's a whole nother piece because that family Bible was so critical. And to read some of the notes in the family Bible, you know,
Mhm.
I was a practicing attorney for about 25 years, and they call it the ancient records. That was one of those exceptions to the hearsay rule, you know.
Mhm.
And so I remember having a case where we were proving relationship,
Mhm.
and the Bible that it was written in 1910. The lady wrote that this person was born in Brooklyn, New York, and it was a black woman. And so
Mhm.
she wasn't born in a hospital, so there were no official records. But
Mhm.
in the Bible, it said she was born of such and such, and this was her mother, and this was her father.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. And it was so here we were, so that time was 70 years later,
Yeah.
when the
Mhm.
lady had died, and she'd accumulated a considerable amount of money.
Mhm.
And so we were trying to keep the money from going to the state, and so we actually found heirs based on that old Bible.
Really?
Yeah,
Love that. That's
yeah, yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, Deidre, tell us a little about your early years, your background. You were sharing a little about it before.
Yeah, so I come from not only a military background, from military family, but also a blended family.
Hmm.
So we moved around a lot. There was a lot of us. So that was, early on, just having to go to new places, just constantly because of the military move. And early on, just in school, struggling. Not struggling to always be the new student, but just just struggling with literacy and having to hide that and really allowing life to shape me because of that lack of skill.
Mm, mm. Now that's interesting. You put that allowing life to shape you. What is
Hmm.
that? How do you? What is kind of delve into that a little bit?
Yeah, so at an early age, you don't realize, right? You just kind of
Mm-hmm.
function, and then probably about probably 7, 8, you really kind of start to realize things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you realize your shortcomings, you realize the things you're good at, you realize embarrassment at that stage in life, and so being a child who struggled with reading, kids are brutally honest.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so when you at an early age get made fun of and poked at, like, it really shapes you.
yeah.
It shapes you from where I was an extrovert as a child, you become introverted to try to hide.
Mm,
So then I wasn't even operating in my true self because I
yeah.
was so afraid of just, being exposed, and my shameful embarrassment and secret that I had of my literacy struggles really shaped um, so many aspects of my life. The
Mm,
things I chose to do, the friends I chose to keep, just so many different things because I was so afraid of not being accepted that I would learn I would go through life hiding.
mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Wow, yeah. And that drove you, I guess, through college and on through life. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yep.
Mm,
So, yeah, going through college, even with the struggle, having to get creative and getting help, secret help,
mm-hmm.
um, just to get things put in a language that I understood that helped me to make it. Right. I wasn't an AB college student. I was a CD, but I got that diploma. So I was excited
Yeah.
because it wasn't supposed to happen.
Mm.
Mhm.
A lot of times people resist getting help,
Mhm.
and I think that shows a certain real level of desire
Mhm.
that you were able to do that. Now, the
Mhm.
person who helped you, what was it about them that really gave you that breakthrough?
So it was my dad.
Uh-huh.
And I think I think him seeing the potential and him seeing the drive and him matching my effort. That was one of the things he told me.
Mm-hmm.
When I realized, hey, daddy, I want to be pulled out of these special ed classes. I'm not learning anything. I don't want to be behind. I want to be, a functioning adult. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to get that if I continue to be in these classes. He
Mm.
was very honest and told me everything says you need to be here, but as your
Mm.
parent, I can pull you out. It's going
Yeah.
to take effort and work on your part, but I am willing to match the effort that you put in.
Ooh.
And it was a hard decision, tears in my eyes. I was like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
And, the next 4 years, because that was in eighth grade, would be super challenging. And the next 5 years to get me through college was more so challenging, but he committed to me. He matched my effort. I was
Mm-hmm.
determined. And he took the time, he created space for me.
Mm. Deidre, that's such a blessing because so many times people don't have that person, that
Hmm.
parent,
Yep.
you know, and for whatever reason, sometimes parents are so stressed out from providing enough money to just have a place to live and eat that
Yep.
there's no time to give that kind of quality,
Hmm.
assistance.
Yep.
It is often said that for children, for young people, love is spelled Time.
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Hmm.
And I can see that was so valuable. And so, to our listeners, as a parent,
Hmm.
you can see how just that extra time he put into your development,
Yep.
it brought you to where you are.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, it definitely did, and I'm so grateful, because, like I said, I came from a large family. I wasn't the only child who needed attention or help.
Yeah.
So, him making the time to help me, or he had to help others do different things,
Yeah.
is so special, and I don't take that for granted. Mhm.
Wow. Wow. Well, as a parent, for the parents listening, those this those hours, those time slots are slots that you cannot replace. You cannot go back. You cannot. They have to be done at the proper time. And so that was a real blessing for you to have that, and take my hat off to your dad,
Yes.
Super, super, super. So now you've evolved on, through college. Where did that lead you when you finished college?
Sadly, it led me hiding and afraid. I got through college and yes, I maintained and graduated, but what I realized is I never fixed the problem.
Mm,
So I felt limited in my abilities. I missed out on job opportunities. And a lot of the times because I was fearful. And two, I didn't truly have the skill set to function well. So
mm,
I decided to just go to survival mode and I was just surviving. Okay, how do I have a job that allows me to work and put a roof over my head?
mm-hmm,
Um, and, I did that for a good 15 years until there was a tug to do more.
mm,
And I thought, okay, this is great. And I just had this desire to do so much more. And I realized that I lacked a skill. So then I had to get busy. I had to have a strong desire to do the work.
mm, mm. That self-assessment is critical, isn't it?
Listen, the best thing that I probably could have gained was self assessment because I didn't have it at a point in time in life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
That I think there are people who face that challenge.
Hmm.
You get into, I won't call it a rut, but you get into a certain level of existence,
Hmm.
and you feel this need to change. You feel this need to do more.
Yeah.
Now,
Mhm.
were you married at the time, or?
No, not
Uh-huh.
married.
Uh-huh.
Just me. Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that could have been a blessing, because change is, the more moving parts you have to change, the more challenging it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have a daughter, and like most of her contemporaries are married and have kids, and she's so focused on her career. I think she said, she's looking at it. She's like, "There's no way I could do what I do if I had, a family and kids."
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's a testament, but that
Mhm.
shows a certain individuality, though.
Yeah.
Because I, in talking with her, I see there's a lot of pressure to have a family, to have kids, to do all those kind of things.
Mhm.
And how did you get through that? How did you respond to that?
It's so funny. I think at a time I was chasing a career, I was chasing success, I was chasing the societal norms of what you
Uh-huh.
should have to be married, to have children. And I'm 37 years old and I don't have any of those things.
Uh-huh.
And what I had to realize is when I had to be honest with myself of what my deep desire is. And I had to really look at I desired more to leave a legacy and an impact in
Mm-hmm.
individuals than I did in wanting to have my own family and do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because of my own life experience. And I think a lot of time in our life experience, it births something else, right? I feel
Okay.
like things, we go through things because we're supposed to do something with it.
Yes.
So I struggled with reading. I was an adult who struggled with reading. I
Mm.
knew at 18 that I was going to create a space for people who shared in my experience so
Mm-hmm.
that they can gain a skill that they missed in grade school so that they can have a better quality of life.
So that personal experience really became a driving force behind your nonprofit then.
Yes, absolutely. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, now, a lot of people talk about setting up a nonprofit and doing it, but doing is a whole different ball game.
Yes. Listen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, what?
Completely different.
Yeah, what were some of the challenges? first, what was your vision at the time when you decided to make that move? What was your vision?
So like I said, I knew at 18 that I was going to create something. I had no idea what it was. I think in that space in my life, due to my own shame and embarrassment, I saw it as I'm going to do this when I retire, when I'm in my 50s and 60s, because I feel like at that space, you don't care what anyone thinks. And there was so much shame attached.
Mhm.
But the goal was for no one to experience the limitness that I felt from lacking essential skills such as reading,
Yes.
and how paralyzing it was to my life. And I really wanted to remove that so no one else had to go through that.
Mhm.
If it was just to give them a skill. So that was the vision. The vision was not only to give a skill, but to give them dignity and respect. Because most adults and most children who struggle with reading, we don't feel dignified. We are
Mm.
embarrassed. We are fearful about being exposed, about being accepted, people thinking less than us being the weakest link. And I wanted to do it in a way that celebrated them, that kept their privacy if they didn't want it to be shared.
Yes.
Because people who lack literacy, they're not dumb. We get creative to be able to survive. So just creating a space that allowed them to do that and to work on it privately without them being exposed, without us using,
Mhm.
that to get funding. And that's where the challenge came in. The
Uh-huh.
challenges that we faced were not only did we start in the midst of the pandemic
Uh-huh.
in March of 2020, but we did it in a way where we didn't want to share the identity of our clients. We wanted to ensure that we kept that privacy because some
Mm.
of them had jobs that they were afraid if my employer finds out, am I no
Oh,
longer qualified,
right,
right?
right.
So those are two big challenges, and they're still to this day challenges because most people they just want to know. They want to know who are you helping and what's their sad story and what's going on. So the challenge in still doing that, but giving the people that we serve dignity as we get creative and sharing their stories, sharing why we're important, um, present a
Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
as you were sharing that, I could see how that would be. Yeah, because the nonprofit, that whole paradigm, they wanna
Mhm.
they wanna give you some money, but
Yeah.
they wanna make sure that it's doing the right thing and that you're getting enough
Mhm.
your statistics
Yep.
showing that you're really getting things done, and then
Mhm.
even then it may be just an experiment for them, and they're going to give the money to somebody else the next time. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep. Mhm.
wow, yeah.
So,
What was it you think that made them support you? What was that that niche that you had that you fulfilled?
um, I was willing to share my personal story. I was an example of the work that we were trying to do.
Mm,
I share in the experience of those that we serve,
okay.
and just doing the work and someone taking time to pour in. It showed what success could truly happen through this process, and how where it seems so unattainable. But once you start getting these basics, you realize that there's gaps and holes in literacy. And
Mm,
when we feel that, it just takes off. And it allows for some people who could not get a job to get a job, even if it's super entry level. For those that are in entry level jobs to be able to step into a management position, being able to help their children, who can't. So when we talk about generational things, um, parents can't help their children if they don't have what their children need to help.
wow.
Mhm.
Wow. That I
Yeah.
mean, that just seems like sometimes I guess you must look at it, this seems like so big a challenge.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, what keeps you going?
Um, just honestly, the one or two. When you first start to just see where it's so minor to someone else, but it's life changing to the one or two that you're touching in that moment.
Wow.
And when stories are shared, when there's a commonality and an understanding, someone who gets you, right? Typically
Yes.
in situations we feel like we're the only ones. I'm the only one that's going through this. It's only happening to me. But when
Mm,
your eyes are open and it's happening to so many other people, but instead of continuing to bring a problem, we shine light on a problem, but then we have a solution. So then
mm.
there's hope. There's hope, and yes, it's going to be hard work. Yes, there's a sacrifice. Yes, there has to be a deep desire, but it's there.
But it's there.
Yeah.
And going through that process, it seems that I can see there's like a whole lot of obstacles, a whole lot of barriers.
Yeah.
But what would you, if you could say in taking in that idea from well, number one, so did you immediately quit your job and start the program, or what did you do?
Absolutely not. I still work to this
Okay,
day.
okay,
Yeah, I still work to this day. And I was, again, it was during the pandemic, so everything was shut down. So I had the
yeah,
extra space to
uh-huh,
really do it. But I really believe when you have a desire and a vision, it makes room for you. So where
ooh,
I was still working my full-time job, I was
yes,
working this nonprofit. And
yes,
I was getting behind the vision that was given to me, and it fueled me and it kept me going. When I got the no's, when I get a yes today, I'm like,
uh-huh,
what? I got yes, yes, because I'm
yes,
so used to no
uh-huh,
that it drives me. And to be able to help, I think about those people whose lives are going to change.
uh-huh,
And it 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 drives me through
mm,
the disappointment. It drives me
yeah,
through the late nights, through the tears,
yeah,
through putting all my eggs in one basket and
mm.
the basket breaking, just
Oh
being
yeah, oh
destroyed.
yeah, 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 yeah,
So
wow,
just the desire to help people and to change their lives, like, is huge, and it motivates me. Mhm.
wow. Well,
Yeah.
as you were saying before, a part of your strongest selling point was that first person story.
Hmm.
And it's a lot more effective to
Hmm.
guide people where you have been.
Yep.
You know, someone said, If I'm going to ever learn how to fly a plane, I want to learn from somebody who's flown the plane,
Yep.
crashed and burned,
Yeah.
and still survived to fly
Yes,
again."
I was gonna say, and survived it.
Yeah, that's who I want to learn from.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Now, being an attractive lady, a person, I mean, just radiant, were there distractions to pull you away from this project?
Distractions, there were a lot of internal distractions,
Uh-huh,
as well as external. So,
uh-huh,
going back to feel like, am I qualified? And like, who am I to go to these people, say I started this thing and this is my story,
uh-huh.
right? Shame always met me when I shared, right? And
Oh, yeah.
so, but my why was so much bigger than the shame. So even though I showed up with the shame, I had to say, I'm doing this so that no one else experiences this. So if this means I have to give of myself and I have to be vulnerable and I have to share,
Uh-huh.
then that is what I did. But there's a lot of times I was in my own head. Who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I? I just started my literacy journey 8 years ago. Who
Uh,
am I to
mhm.
sit here and say I'm a co-founder and an executive director of this nonprofit, and I'm asking, for you to support so we can support these people? That's a distraction when you
Yeah.
don't feel qualified,
Yeah.
when you're
Yeah.
allowing your paths to really dictate your future. And
Ooh.
I had
Yeah.
to, my how I overcame that was having to say, my past doesn't dictate my future. It propels me to my purpose. And
Mm.
what am I willing to do? How am I willing to continue to show up ashamed, embarrassed, talked about, questioned, and still do this work?
Wow. I had to make a note here. My past does not dictate my future, and your past, it
Mhm.
propels you to your purpose.
Yep. Hmm. Yep.
Wow.
Hmm.
My past does not dictate my future. And so your past drives you to your purpose
Yeah.
because you've been there.
Yeah. There's
Woo.
something about not staying where you've been when you're called to do more. Mm-hmm.
Now, what about external impediments and distractions?
So, one, just a nonprofit is ran like a business, but is not treated like one. So, when you're starting a nonprofit, you got to work.
Hmm.
And your work is not that nonprofit, it is somewhere else that's helping you fund that nonprofit at the time. So
Uh-huh.
just just physical fatigue, mental fatigue,
Mm-mm.
um, you know, really people questioning. It's so funny because people who don't have the experience, people who've had the privilege to be literate their whole life, don't understand illiteracy.
Mm.
They can't fathom how someone cannot read, how someone cannot fill out doctor paperwork, read their prescriptions, read street signs. It's something that it's almost unbelievable. So
Mhm.
in that, sometimes getting questions about, is this really true? Is this really a service that's necessary? Um, has, presented sometimes as an obstacle and a distraction that kind of pauses you because you're just like, okay, so what can I do if you don't believe that this is a real thing?
Yeah,
You don't
yeah,
walk
yeah.
away, you don't give up. It becomes a case of, how do I help you to understand if you don't understand?
Wow.
Mhm.
Let's just meditate on that for a moment, because so often you are dealing with people who it's almost like in the movie industry. You know, they say, well, the suits have to approve the project.
Mhm.
So you bring them a truly unique uh, film project, and the suits have a frame of reference. All they see are dollar signs and
Mhm.
billboards, and,
Yeah.
and they're trying to evaluate a creative product.
Yeah.
And I can imagine in your area, you know,
Mhm.
I'm sure that most of the people who are in the funding, capacity,
Mhm.
like I say, I can see you coming up against that pretty often. Like, do people really not read? I
Yep.
mean, isn't that the job of the parents? Isn't
Yeah.
that the job of the students of the school?
Mhm.
Why are we doing? It seems like this is redundant. Yeah.
Yep. Mhm.
Wow.
Yep, and most people don't see, so we fall into education and we also fall into workforce development, but depending on the qualifications, we don't fit either one at times,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we have to go off of what their qualifications and what their requirements are.
Mm-hmm.
And so most people see education as K through 12 only. And
Mm.
most people will see workforce development as, how are you giving them um, a skill to go out and do a job quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on that, it's challenging because we don't fit in there. So where do we fit?
Yeah.
Um, so it produces its own challenges for sure.
Yeah.
um, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just like completely enamored. I mean, just it's like a huge project. I have a personal relationship to it. My dad, I didn't realize my dad couldn't read until I went to college,
Mhm. Yeah.
because he had a way of doing stuff, like Herbert, read that. That boy Herbert, he can read everything, you know.
Mhm.
And as a kid, I just loved it. Dad, let me read, let me read, let me read. But it was a crutch for
Yeah.
him, you
Mhm.
know. And in the days, my mom and the teachers very
Mhm.
often. So my mom was a teacher with 2 or 3 advanced degrees. My dad was a janitor with no degrees.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that created in itself a blockage. And so I can see how, I never understood it at the time, but
Mhm.
I can see why he did a lot of what he did.
Yep.
Like, as you say, that possible shame, you know,
Mhm.
the, uh, the, like I remember once I asked him, I said, why didn't you go into the military? Why didn't they draft you? And I had heard, that if you couldn't read and write, like it was hard to be, that might be an exemption
Yep.
if it was for real, like
Mhm.
yeah.
Yep.
but
Mhm.
uh, but and he always gave a story. He said, "Well, Herbert," he says, we had to go to Raleigh to be drafted, and the bus left from the post office, and it was in the days of segregation,
Mhm.
and There were more black men. There were more white men there. There were no seats for a black man. There was no. The white men took up the whole bus, and
Yep.
they told him to come back tomorrow.
Yep.
And he said,
Mhm.
"I ain't no fool."
You see, I just didn't come back tomorrow,
I
right?
just didn't come back tomorrow. But it was probably because,
Yep.
you know, and then he had a way of, he always told jokes. And I
Yep.
think that was his way of
Mm.
creating rapport and getting along with people. So
Yep.
I can appreciate your work because it really shaped him. Like I didn't understand the cage he had created, the cage
Mhm.
that he lived in until, I was grown.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
and and funny, even after my mother had passed, he actually sued me. And when I asked him why, because we're living in the same house, and he said, "Well, you talk really fast, and I don't understand what you're saying sometimes." And
Uh-huh.
what he was really saying was he could not read because I was handling all the business. He could not comprehend what I was doing. And then
Mhm.
I think he had a friend who told him, this New York guy, you better watch him, you know.
Oh.
But yeah, but all that was a crutch because he never felt that he understood. So he always thought that, and when I looked at it, he always thought that people were taking advantage of him. And
Yes.
it was
Mhm.
probably because he couldn't read.
Yep.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Wow.
Mhm. Yes. It can be paralyzing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's paralyzing to your life. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just know that experience firsthand. And that's why this work is so important to me.
Well, I tell you what, anybody who watches this video, they're going to see a phenomenal person
Thank
who can project the mission, the
you.
purpose of what you're doing. As you look where you are now, what would you say is your most important victory? What's your greatest victory, your greatest accomplishment so far?
I would say starting the nonprofit.
Mm.
Starting the nonprofit when I was at the tail end of finishing my own literacy journey, and where I still had so much shame and embarrassment doing it anyway.
Mhm.
And by doing it anyway, there's so many lives that we will be able to touch for years to come,
Uh-huh.
and so many that we've already been able to touch, and just being able to let them know that they're not alone. Um, Nothing happened, to them because it was them. It's just something that happened to them, but
Uh-huh.
we're working through it together. And someone else shares in their experience,
Yeah.
and being brave enough to raise my hand and say, "Hey, this is what happened, but this is my solution."
Yes.
Um, is my greatest just victory just in this space right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your journey has been so long and you might say roundabout. Thank God for your dad.
Yes. So
If
long.
you look back now, you say you were 38,
37.
37. Oh, I apologize.
It's
I
okay.
mean, if you came into my club, I'd ask you for ID.
Okay, and I would show it to you gladly. Boom, boom.
I was at an airport once, and the guy asked me for ID. This is, I don't know, 5 or 6, about before well before the pandemic. And I was so gleeful. It was like, you really want my ID here? You, you think I look young? And he's like, sir, we just have to do it. Okay. Don't go off on a trip. Don't be tripping.
That is
Yeah.
hilarious.
uh, if you look back, that period and say you were coming out of high school, going to college, you look back from where you are now.
Mm.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Do it afraid.
Ooh,
Do not worry about what anyone else thinks. Don't even worry about how you feel. Do it afraid is what I would have told my younger self.
that's powerful.
Mhm.
Do it afraid.
Yeah.
There's a quote that says, "It's a fool who does not fear, but it is a wise man who is not overcome by fear." And
Yep.
that's really what you're saying. You're
Yeah.
gonna be afraid, but
Do it
do it
anyway.
anyway.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yes.
Yeah. Even when nobody believes in you. But one day if I ever meet your dad, I'm going to shake his hand
Yeah.
and say, man, you created a masterpiece here.
Yeah. Yes, he definitely did. Yes.
Hmm. Now, when you look down the line, because clearly this nonprofit that you've set up has such a vast need, and considering the pandemic
Mm-hmm.
and how not just young people, but how people's overall reading level has dropped,
Mm-hmm.
the need for what you're doing is going to be even greater.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
everything has a season. When you have kids who've missed a year or 2 years of school,
Yep.
I don't, it's hard to replace that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So when you look down the line 20, 25 years from where you want to be,
Mm-hmm.
what advice would you give your current self based on where you want to be 25 years from now?
Um, oh, that's good. Don't lose sight of the vision.
Mm,
Yeah.
don't lose sight of vision. Wow.
Yeah. Don't lose sight of the vision and use your imagination to get there. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm taking notes, right? I mean, you're dropping pearls, girl. I am serious. But this is the kind of wisdom you can only get by getting it. In
Yeah.
other words, this is not reading wisdom. This is living wisdom.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, we sent you a copy of our book, and I
Yes.
appreciate it.
Yes.
You know, we gave the Literacy Council here in Wilmington.
Mhm.
This is interesting. A young man who worked with me, we were in the political arena, and I used to run campaigns. And he was a young man who published a hip hop like newspaper.
Okay.
And so the poet laureate for North Carolina, which is a black woman,
Mhm.
was speaking at the Literacy Council fundraiser. So I
Mhm.
said, I want to go. I really want to see her. So I went, and one of the prime examples of the benefits of the literacy program was the very young man who I had known 20 years before
Mhm.
running a newspaper. And I was stunned. Like, how can you run a newspaper and you can't read?
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
he found a way to cope. And I think when we talked, he was just very gracious, and just saying how, the book had helped him, and and I was so moved by his progress that I gave a case of the books to the literacy program.
Oh, awesome.
And and
Yay.
we and we're gonna do something with your program because I just gotten great reports back from it because the book is written on a level that like anybody can read it. So, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts? What was your impression of the book, and is there any section that really stood out for you?
Yes. Oh my God, I have so much to say, but I will just say it's like a blueprint. And with blueprints, you go back to them, right? There's
Mhm,
different stages of the process, but you get to go back
mhm,
and you get to revisit and you get to make notes. And once you master these three, then it's these three, and you just, you keep going. So I love just that I feel like it's something that will be around forever. And even as an owner of the book, that I will get to visit it
mhm,
multiple times because it really, yes, it's for your life, but it's also for very specific situations as you have to navigate through different things.
mhm,
I think I really, 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 and just where I am in my life and in
mhm,
this season,
mhm,
I really love the law of thought. Um, because you have to think it first before anything else. It has to be a thought. It has
mhm,
to You have to work through that process, and really your self-image and your self-esteem is so important because and I think I shared this. If I could not do this work if I continue to view myself how I used to view myself.
Oh, yes, yes,
So just to know and truly like self-image and the thought of how you see yourself is what propels you and puts you in places.
yes.
And even the law of change, like you have to be willing to change. You have to know what obstacles that are going to face you with change and what that really means and just the desire to change, right?
Yes,
We can tell people
yes,
all day you need to change, but if they have no desire, they're not meeting you at change. They're going to keep doing what they're doing. There
yes.
has to be a personal desire. And I think my favorite one is truly is vision. Like you, if you don't have vision, you don't know where you're going. How can
Hmm.
you set a path? How can you really measure success if you have no idea where you're going? You can say all day, oh, I want to be successful. Oh, I
Hmm.
want this, I want this. But if you have no vision of what that is, how do you know if you haven't already reached it?
Wow. I tell you, Deidra, you got that book.
Yeah.
You you mastered that book.
So
But
good.
that when I hear you share, that was the goal to give to give people almost like a recipe. Like if you can do A,
Yes.
B, C, and D, you can get
Hmm.
D, you can get E, you can get F, and
Yes.
when you can put it on that level, it's so often, that I think we wanted to give people a step-by-step thing. It's like
Yes.
it's good to see the big picture, but how do you get from where you are to where you want to
Yes.
be?
Yes.
That's your hotline. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that there was practical, like there were you were, you shared
Uh,
these are going to be your obstacles and this is how
uh-huh.
you're going to know that you're here and
Yes.
this is what's going to take you from here to there. Like
Yeah.
you have to give people like the tools because sometimes you can lose people in statements. You
Yeah.
really piece by piece, kind of like you said, step
Yes.
by step of
Yeah.
where you're going. Yes, you're going to face is, oh, I'm going to face challenges when I want to
Mm.
change. Okay, great, so this is what I'm going to do when I get that is just
Wow.
so important.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Deirdre, let me say this to you. I thank you so much for this incredible interview. I'm a great admirer of your work.
Thank you.
I'm just amazed, and I think that those who listen to this will be inspired. That you had a dream, you had a challenge.
Yeah.
You did not let the challenge get you down. You were able to get help,
Mhm,
and you grew through it.
mhm.
And having grown through it, now you become a model for other people. You see that a lot of people don't want to take on that model aspect. It's like, I got to it, I figured it out, and good for me. Let me roll on.
Yeah.
but
Yes.
but just listening to you and getting a sense of your level of understanding and application,
Yeah.
truly the best is yet to come. You have just scratched the surface. You were sharing that you were on the Kelly Clarkson show,
Mhm.
and I bet you got a lot of positive feedback from that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we got a lot of people that, needed help. So it was great just to, we really want to serve and we really want to help change the trajectory of an individual's life because it
Mm,
not only impacts their individual lives, but our communities, our society as a whole. So,
yes.
yeah.
Well, what is your website for your organization?
Yes, so the website is readingtonewheights.org is our website.
Reading
And
uh-huh,
mhm,
to newheights.org. That's beautiful. I
yes.
like that. Okay. Now, do you do like Instagram? Do stuff on Instagram also?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. So we're on
Okay.
those three
Okay.
platforms. So for LinkedIn and Facebook, we are just reading to new heights is how
Uh-huh.
you would find us.
Uh-huh.
On Instagram, we're reading to underscore new heights.
I
Mhm.
got you. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I tell you, I thank you so much. Are there any other words of wisdom, any other things that you'd like to share for people that who listen to this broadcast and who say either that's me and
Yes.
I'm inspired,
Yeah.
or those people who say, "Wow, I didn't know that was a problem." Okay.
Yeah.
What final words would you like to share with our audience?
I would say just truly it's never too late. I
Mm,
think sometimes we think we've missed the ball, we're too old, we missed that train, but it is never too late to try that new thing, to revisit that old thing, whatever it is. If it is a desire and a goal of yours, don't ever limit yourself by thinking you have missed the mark,
gotcha.
because as long as you have breath in your body,
Mm-hmm.
then whatever it is that you desire, it's achievable.
Yes.
You just have to believe so, and you have to
Wow.
want it enough.
Wow.
Mhm.
Well, Deidra, thank you so much for being on our program. Thank you so much for sharing the light to our listeners. I always say you need to listen to this program, but this is a program I heard some life lessons that were so profound because so many of us need to make a breakthrough, need to break the shackles that have chained us, that have shamed us, and
Yeah.
that have really defined our lives.
Yeah.
And and some of the thoughts that Deirdre has shared with us today of her experiences and her breakthroughs can be an inspiration to you, can let you know it is possible. You may be struggling with something similar, and to say, hey, there's always a way to get through it. There's always a way to make it happen.
Yes.
So, so listen to this broadcast, share it, make
Mhm.
some comments. If especially if you know someone, or if you have some thoughts yourself, make some comments. Reach out to her organization, get
Mhm.
help. And I'll say this: that when you can function on this level of clarity,
Mhm.
where you know exactly what you want to do, and you're functioning, and as you said before, when your past does not dictate your future and your past becomes your purpose,
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
evolution and that transformation, then you can truly be what you want to be, do what you want to do, and have anything you desire,
Yeah.
always knowing that the best is yet to come.
Yes.
So it is.